Hi, welcome back to the I Help Men Stand Out for the Right Reasons podcast, previously known as the I Help Men Dress Better podcast. Still the same topics, but I am trying to hone in more specifically on the problem of, standing out and not just standing out, but standing out for the right reasons. If you've ever been told that you're too much, if you've ever felt like because of that, you felt like you're not enough, if you worry about standing out for the right reasons, and if you want to stand out without that just like overwhelming sense, that overwhelming fear of rejection, that is what I talk about, and that is what I want to help you address. That's what my work sets out to address. So I wanted to pick up from last week. We spoke about my framework tools, subject, audience, and how you can go from over focusing on audience and being worried about how people perceive you to empowering yourself through tools, learning about yourself through subject, and then revisiting audience as a way from a new viewpoint, revisiting audience from a new viewpoint, and being able to be more empowered and in control of your life instead of always feeling like you're playing catch up, always feeling like you're looking to other people to tell you what to do and who to be. And this week I wanted to talk about something I mentioned last week, which was the idea that there is a dark side of all three of these. There's a dark side of tools, a dark side of subject, and a dark side of audience. I'm going to share my screen and just pick up from where I left off. As you can see, we've got tools, subject, and audience. I'm actually going to erase these and start from scratch. But there is a light side and a dark side to all of these, and that's what I want to address so that you can, first of all, figure out, where you may sit personally, because, you may be like the person in my first video, who I used to be. And you may be, really, really stuck in audience, really stuck in what people think of you. Um, you may be stuck in, you may have kind of figured out how not to be stuck in tools. But maybe you actually got stuck in subject. Maybe you started off kind of being, I know self-centered is not really a term that most people like to identify with, but it's that kind of I don't care attitude, that kind of I don't give attitude where, I'm not really concerned with what people think to the degree that, there are negative repercussions. And that would be, part of the darker side of subject. A lot of people can get stuck in this dichotomy where they think that their options are either I live to please others, I live to be a pleaser, I live to, please the outside world, or I'm kind of individualistic. I'm very just me. I don't care if I'm unpleasant. And I believe that it's really important to be balanced. It's really important to find where you lie between these two and to find your version of pleasant. That is the version of you that is true and honest and also meets people where they are. We don't live in a vacuum. We are, social creatures. And as much as it is so important to be an individual and to be, somebody to be somebody, it's also important to be somebody who people want to be close to, who people aspire to be, um, especially if you are a speaker, right? I work primarily with speakers to help them with their visual branding. That's a lot of what I use my framework for. And, you know, when you're speaking to people, so much of it is not, so much of it is about realizing that, your purpose is not to illustrate how impressive you are. Your purpose is actually to be someone inspirational and aspirational that people want to impress, not because they're scared, but because they feel impressive, because you make them feel impressive. And that's actually what we're looking to do here. Is that's one of the reasons why, getting stuck in the dark side of subject is such a problem. So the dark side of audience is, people pleasing and just caring too much what people think, right? It's that, yeah, like lack of self-trust. So, fear of others' opinions. That's kind of the dark side of audience. And that's what we discussed in the first video in last week's podcast. What I want to discuss here is we kind of touched on this in subject. Subject would be a little bit of, selfishness, or, being antisocial, really just only caring about yourself and not meeting people, not having grace for people, not respecting any social norms, right? There are a lot of social norms that feel oppressive, and I fully understand why you would want to rebel against them in such an extreme way, right? They feel like they are so extreme, and so it feels like you need to push back against them in this really powerful way. But there's a maturity to understanding balance. There's a maturity to realizing that the conflicting forces in the universe, there is not a right or wrong force. We are predisposed to the pull of one of these forces. And the way that we're able to grow and extend ourselves is actually by strengthening the opposing force and allowing that to pull us into the center and create balance. So I think it's pretty straightforward, what the dark side of, subject of worrying so much about your own opinion and your own viewpoint and what you want to say, and discounting other people, discounting social norms, discounting what's expected of you, fully discounting it. And of course we all know the downsides of people pleasing and sacrificing who you are, and giving yourself up, and putting everything else and everyone else so far ahead of you that you die, right? The you inside yourself dies. It's put second. So those are these, two extremes, and we understand kind of the dark sides of those and why we would want to embody both and use them to balance each other. But, what's the dark side of tools? What could be the dark side of, knowing the tools and skills, empowering ourselves with knowledge and experience in an area? In my case, it would be style. In your case, it may be public speaking, maybe something business related, or, the topic that you speak about. So what's the downside? What happens if someone is, all that? If that's their starting point, what does that look like? And I think that it's the person who ignores the subject and the audience and is just focused on the tools. So, I think this could look like being, maybe it's looking like a know-it-all. I think that might be one version. Like, you empower yourself with the tools, not to, you know, not to help you, but to kind of be a know-it-all on it, to, correct others and criticize others. I think that's one area where, tools can be a challenging place to be. You make sure that you know everything, and that you really trust your judgment, and you really trust your viewpoint, and you don't really let anyone else's knowledge, make you question or second. I wouldn't say second guess, but you don't allow anything else in. But I think the other area where tools can be a challenge is if you're just focused on like doing it right. You're not actually interested in what you want or what other people want. So, you know, if I could give an example from, let's say, art, if you are so focused on, drawing a certain way, on, you know, combining colors a certain way, on making your image look a certain way, that you're not creating something that feels like it's communicating what you want it to communicate, and it's not appealing to anyone. You're not drawing something that you want, you're not drawing something that people want. It's You're just so focused on like getting it right, on getting the tools right. In style, in your visual brand and the way this looks, it could be wearing clothing that is outside the norm. you know Other people don't really get it, and it's not really it's not really representing who you are, but it fits the rules. Your color combinations are perfect and your proportions are exact. Like everything is perfect, but it doesn't say anything about you, and it doesn't reflect, social norms. It doesn't reflect your context. It's not connected to you at all. It's just the right way, right? It's just like um for perfection's sake, perfection. It's like a very specific form of perfectionism, right? You're not trying to be perfect in your own eyes. You're not trying to be perfect in someone else's eyes, at least as far as, being understood. It's this perfectionism of like doing it right. And then doing it right is all that matters. That could look like your suit fits perfectly and your tie is perfect and you know exactly how to match all the colors and you have that all put together. But you aren't really a suit person. Like, it doesn't make sense for your life. It doesn't make sense for you and your personality. And it doesn't make sense for your work, right? Like, excuse me, sir, this is a Wendy's, right? You're like a server at Wendy's. But you just think that, doing suiting right is how you need to do it. And you show up in your, you know, 5-piece suit. No, there's no such thing as a 5-piece suit. Your 3-piece suit and your, perfectly shined shoes, the right shoes, and the colors are all perfect and everything's perfect. And if anyone says like, dude, like this is the weird thing to wear. Do you even like this? You're like, no, but it's the right thing. So I would say that is the dark side of tools. So we can really be brought into any of these. We can really start anywhere. I think the most common is audience. I think audience is the most common place that people start, right? That fear of what other people think of us, fear of other people's opinions, being too worried about, rejection, about judgment, about what people are going to say and think about us. And I think I think when subject and selfishness and being antisocial is the starting point, I think it's much rarer that that is the starting point. And it's much more common that you started as worrying about what everyone thought, and then you flipped and you went full 180 to, full 360. Well, I guess 360 would send you back to where you started. Full 180 to, if I can't impress everyone, I'm just gonna go the opposite way. I'm gonna go full on, full speed ahead the other direction. So I do think that audience tends to be the starting point. And I think the same thing with tools. You can get stuck. You can be so worried about what people think that you learn the tools and you never get to move on to like, what is my taste? What do I want? What do I want to say? How am I using, this? How am I using my knowledge and skill to communicate who I am, to communicate what I want to communicate? I think I think a lot of stylists get stuck here. A lot of people hire stylists, and stylists will either come and style them for their audience. The stylist will say, "Well, it doesn't really matter who you are. We're going to make you look good, kind of based on what's trendy, what other people want to see. We want to make you look normal. We want you to fit in, and this is how you should look because this is what your peers look like." That's I think a lot of stylists come in like that. Of course, there are tons of stylists who come in just from that subject lens, right? They come in and they're like, no, you need to be who you want to be, and you need to just be, quirky and loud and bold and colorful. And sometimes that, sometimes that goes too far where it stops serving you and you stop standing out for the right reasons and you start standing out for the wrong reasons. You start sacrificing your the perception of your competence for your quirkiness, and your people aren't taking you seriously because people aren't taking you seriously. People aren't really trusting you because it's so about you. It's so about you. Um, and yeah, I think also a lot of stylists will come in and they'll come in with tools, right? They'll just come in and go, well, this is the right way. You need to do it this way. You need to wear these clothes and you need to wear them this way because this is the right way. And they don't take in the full scope, right? They don't see it as a framework, as a system that all need to work together. They don't consider all of these pieces together because they really do. They cycle into each other, right? Your tools and abilities inform how you can communicate. It's like writing. The more words you have, the more you understand how to write, the more you're able to express yourself. And the more you're able to express yourself, the more you can start to think about, oh, what does my audience want? How can I express myself in a way that helps the people I want to help? And that is really, in its essence, at the center of my work and what sets me apart from a stylist. Why I consider, I could label myself a stylist, it wouldn't be wrong. But I think this is really what's truly at the center of visual branding, where it becomes something more and it becomes something deeper and it becomes something that not only impacts the way that you look, but it can also help, clarify other areas of your life. It's like this practice that you can apply to all sorts of areas of your life. Once you understand it and you have that framework, you can start to take this knowledge and self knowledge and awareness and you know integrate it into all areas of your life to build not just your personal visual brand but your personal brand in general. Thank you so much for joining me here. Um, i hope you enjoyed this. Can I hope you learned something, because like i I think, yeah, I, I hope you enjoyed and I hope you learned something. If you did enjoy, and or if you learned something, like, share it with someone who you think might like and learn something too. That would really go a long way. If you want to know more about what I do, if you want to, know more about I, how I use this to work with people and to help people and what that looks like, go check me out on LinkedIn, Shlomo Hamnick on LinkedIn. My profile picture is me with a bright kind of red, pink, burgundy color. It's hard to miss. Yeah, go check me out there. Go connect with me. Go follow me there. And I would love to see you there and hear from you, and hear from you, hear your thoughts and perspectives in the comments over there. So once again, if you like this, uh, please share it with somebody who you think might enjoy it as well, and subscribe so you can see more. Take care, and I will see you next time.